The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Football Show. We're previewing the Big 12 Conference, and we're talking with Houston running back Rashawn Sanford II. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Football Show. Welcome into an all-new edition of the Sports Stove Football Show on the Belly Up Sports Network, presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. Join the flavor revolution at righteousfelon.com and use the promo code STOVE15. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. Today, we are continuing our college football conference previews with the Big 12. Last week, we hit the ACC, and we talked with Virginia linebacker Maddox Marcellus. Today, we're talking Big 12, and we're talking with Houston running back Rashawn Sanford II. So let's bring him up now. And welcome to the show, Rashawn. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Man, I'm glad to have you. It's one of those things. I was looking at your guys' team, and I like to have guys, if I can, who have been around a little bit. And a lot of your team is new. There's a lot of transfers
Yes,
in.
sir.
Not a lot of guys who were here last year, but you come back as the leading rusher last season, 444 yards, a touchdown, and 18 catches and an extra 157 yards through the air in 2024. But I want to start with your freshman year, your true freshman year. You got injured in preseason camp, and I'm curious, what's the mindset? Because everything that I read said, man, this guy was going to get snaps as a true freshman, but preseason camp, you go down with the injury. Where was your mind at after that injury hit?
I was devastated, of course, as the tweets start going out and reality started to set. I was a little devastated, because of course you want to play coming in. Like that was one of my goals is to play my first season. And unfortunately that didn't go my way. But after the surgery, the day after surgery, I'm like, okay, well, it is what it is. So let's get to work, let's get back to where we were at beforehand and let's get even better than where we were at before. So I can come in for the next season and then hopefully make an impact.
Were you able to see at the end of last season, you got to play last season, all last season, at the end, were you able to look back and go, okay, there was actually some benefit to me having the opportunity to sit? I know as a new coaching staff and stuff this past year anyhow, but did you find benefit in having that year as a true freshman to be able to kind of maybe soak in some of what it was going to be like when you did get on the field?
Yes, sir. I got the chance to, like over the offseason, you got the chance to, learn the playbook. Of course, we did have the coaching change staff. We had the coaching staff change, and then I ended up learning a new playbook. But it was more of although I did get bigger, stronger, and faster, getting my knee back and then also building my body up to get ready to play college football after a whole year. I also got the chance to, learn the game from a mental standpoint as well, getting mental reps, that's a big thing. That's a big part of college is learning what to do when you're not in the game. So learning that aspect of it really helped me understand really the speed of the game and how fast you really need to operate throughout the game to be able to be effective.
Yeah, I just can't imagine what it's like going, because I was not an athlete, although I did play hockey. I was not an athlete. And so I cannot imagine that jump from high school to college, and especially even though you played high school football in Texas, still that jump to that level. I got to believe that's a bigger jump than you even realize until you get into it and go, okay, now I'm learning what this is really like.
Yes, sir. So, like in practice, the speed of the game is like you're playing with a whole bunch of college football players, but when you're getting the actual game, it's a lot more different and it's a lot to get used to. But once you do get used to it, it helps you a lot. Like part of that is learning the playbook, so like you're not thinking so much of other things that you can just go out there and play. So, yeah, it's definitely a big change, but now I'm used to it.
So I was talking with a Houston podcaster, and he told me about you. He said he's talking about you, incredibly talented, huge opportunity for you coming into this year, especially after a good season last year. And this is the phrase he gave me. He said if he was 6'2", he'd be at Alabama. So I want to ask it this way. All right. Number one, first of all, that's a compliment. I hope you take it that way.
Yes,
Second of all, in life, you're 5'9", at least that's you're listed as 5'9", 190. So in life, in going up through high school, getting ready for college, Was there this chip on your shoulder because you can't change how tall you are?
Right.
So was there any kind of chip on your shoulder just because the maybe universities looked at you and said size wise we're going to pass? I don't know. Was that ever a thing for you?
Yes, sir. That's been a thing all my life. People would just be like, "Oh, yeah, he can't do this because he's too short or whatnot," and that would always push me to go even farther than where I'm at. But a part of that too is, although teams overlooked me, Houston was one team that didn't. So I thought of the, I was optimistic about my opportunity. Like I got a foot in the door, so I'm just gonna go ahead and execute on what I have to do and show everybody that I can play at this level and that I will do really great at this level. So, although it is motivating, but also I know there's some benefits to it as well. Like I do feel like I made the right choice coming here. So I do, and I appreciate it.
I love it, man. All right. So last year, like I said, you led the team in rushing. 14, you had 14 rushes of 10 or more yards, 8 rushes of 15 or more yards. So when you look at your game, what is it that, because I follow football, I love college football, especially. I've been covering Eastern Kentucky University for the last 3 years before moving. And I sit there and I watch and I go, okay, what I love to watch with running backs in particular is, yeah, you got that grinded out 3 or 4 yards thing. But what is it that you see that allows you to break out for these longer runs, these 10 plus yards or these 15 plus yards runs? What do you think? What attributes to those rushes?
I feel like being explosive and going on your first instinct. Playing running back, you have to have an instinct. You have to feel where you want to go, and then once it does open, having that explosive, that fast through the line, that quick burst will help you, break some of them arm tackles and then be able to go take that to the far distances.
Now, the college football world's harder to find up to date depth charts and things like that. But it looks like you've got a lot of transfers in on the offensive line this year. Maybe getting one guy that you've played with before, maybe more. But what is that continuity with the offensive line? What kind of relationship do you have to build with them, especially now newer guys to you at least? How do you try to build that relationship? Because obviously, if they don't block, that makes your job a whole lot harder.
Yeah, just the camaraderie that we can build over the off season, not only just in the facility but outside, coming up, doing the extra work, watching extra film, even just hanging out, just getting to know each other, building a genuine relationship with one another could also help us have that bond on the field as well, because we know we'll have each other's back no matter what and things of that nature. And, just, yeah, like I said, just the relationships, and the extra thing, like you're gonna have to go extra if you want to do better, and whatever you want to do, you're just gonna have to put in more work. You understand where the standards that you have to rise to the occasion and things of that nature. And we brought in a really good O line. Iron sharpens iron. So, I yeah, just the relationships and whatnot is gonna help us, build.
You've got another couple playmakers. There's a lot of transfers on your guys' team this year, which is very common across the board. But you got a couple returning guys. I don't know how he says if it's Stefan or Stefan Johnson, so I apologize to miss saying that for him. But wide receiver had some explosiveness last year. He's back this year with some expectation as well. Mekhi Muse is there as well. Some playmaking last year, possibly in the mix on the return game and stuff like that too. So when you look at your guys' offense as a whole, I know there's a lot of new pieces on it, but as a whole, and you got a new quarterback this year too. So when you're looking at your offense this year, tell me about, and I know we've just been through spring, starting all the summer stuff, but talk to me about the confidence you have this year in Houston football, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, and what we can expect to see from you guys this season.
This offense is very, very talented. From what I've seen since the end of the season all the way up until now, we have a lot of talent on this offense. We're bringing guys in, they're helping the guys that we already have. The competition level is just rising, which is only going to make us better. We have a really, really loaded offense, and I feel like we're going to be very explosive as well. It's like there's weapons everywhere you look, no matter what. So it's like no matter who's in the game, somebody's going to make a play.
Connor comes in at quarterback. And, obviously you're going to have a role in the receiving game. So you're going to play on that end too. But talk to me about the exchange, quarterback to running back, you taking the ball from the quarterback. Is it different person to person, or is it kind of built into the system of, hey, here's how we put the ball into the running back's hands?
I said a little bit of both. Of course, they're going to teach everybody the same way how to get it, but at the same time, not everybody's the same player, so it can feel a little bit different depending on like how everybody takes their steps and whatnot. So I said it's a good mix of both.
A little bit of time then to get used to that, of course, as you guys transition into summer camp and everything now as well. Let me bring my dad into the screen as well. He's been he's the reason I like football. We went to talk football a lot growing up and everything like that. Dad, Rashawn's here. What do you got? You've been listening to the interview. What do you got for Rashawn today?
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on. Appreciate you taking time to do it. And just a couple questions. One would be, is there a specific NFL running back that your favorite running back, or someone you kind of model your game after?
A lot of the guys I've watched, a lot of NFL running backs. My favorite recently, definitely Jahmyr Gibbs. I say another one that stepped on the scene. I was watching him since he was at Oregon. Bucky Irvin are the two running backs I really like a lot. I also feel like Bijan Robinson is very talented. I like watching Bijan Robinson play. So those are probably the top three running backs I like right now, as far as NFL wise goes.
Gotcha. Again, Vince and I are Packer fans, so I thought, well, I'll take a chance to ask about this because it looks like, well, during your true freshman year, was Matthew Golden there still at Houston at that time?
Yes, sir.
So what do we have at Green Bay? What are we going to have with him?
You got a guy that's going to do it all for you. He's going to go the extra mile to get all the extra work in. He's going to give it all you got, all he has every single day. He's a first guy in, last guy out type of guy. He's a dog. So he's going to go out there and do his thing regardless. So y'all got a really good one.
Well, he's made a big impression so far with his work ethic. And I was reading today, some players said, he just, he's humble. He just comes in and works hard. And he's made only had a couple OTA practices, but he's looked good from that. So, yeah, looking forward to watching Houston, this year in the Big 12. We have some friends that are tied in with some of the Big 12 schools. And so kind of keep up on that a little bit. And really, when the conference has changed, I thought the Big 12 might be one that would go away. But they apparently got some really good leadership and made some really good moves to not just bring teams in, but bring in quality teams. And looks like great competition there. And again, for you having the chance to be a starter, as a sophomore, it's going to be a great opportunity for you and your future going on. So great to have you on the show here tonight, and we'll look forward to keeping up with your career.
Yes, sir. I just want to thank you guys one more time for having me on here. I really appreciate you guys reaching out and all that and taking the time to, have me on the show, and I just really appreciate it.
Rashawn, I want to ask you two more things real quick before we let you go. Is there a game this year? I know I do this with every college player I talk to. Okay. I know it's the next one. I know it's the most important one's the next one. I get that. But let's put that aside for just a second. Is there a game on your schedule that you say, man, I'm really looking forward either going to that place or playing that team? Like I've circled it on my calendar. I'm ready for that game specifically. Is there a game you're really looking forward to this year?
I mean, I'm looking, like the typical. I'm looking for every game. I'm looking forward to every game. But I got a couple of people that I know at other schools, so I'm excited to play those teams. Like I got friends that play at SFA, Oklahoma State, and Texas Tech, and things of that nature. So I'm really excited to play against them because I once played with them on the same team. So that'll be very exciting to.
I like
experience.
that. That's a good answer. Good answer. All right. And then tell me about Willie Fritz a little bit. Second year, with him, you chose to stick around at Houston with the new staff as well. Year one, you can establish some culture and things like that, but it's really year two. I think you really start to see what the coaching staff brings into the program. So tell me a little bit about what Coach Fritz and the staff have brought into Houston.
From day one, we tried to establish a culture, and that's exactly what he has done since he has been here since day one. He's a really good coach, by the book coach. With him, you're going to do everything right. He builds discipline, and he's going to build a winning culture. He's won everywhere he's been at. So, I really believe in him, and I really appreciate him for everything that he's done because, it's a lot of work, and he's very committed to changing the culture here in Houston.
Last thing I got for you is I like to hear about the support system that guys have. So tell me a little bit about the people behind the scenes, outside of college, at home, or whatever it may be, that you say, man, when I got to count on someone, I know I've got these people behind my back. They've helped me get to where I'm at. And without them, I couldn't have done it. What's that support staff for you?
For sure, my family, my mom, my two sisters, I got old coaches that used to coach me, or people just really show love that's in the city. And, I have my friends and their families as well. Like, there's a lot of people that support me. I really appreciate that back home. So, no matter what I need, back in Arca Heights, they say they got me. So I can always count on that no matter what. And I really appreciate that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Rashawn, I appreciate you. A little behind the curtain. I gave Rashawn the wrong time tonight. He was able to jump on earlier than I originally asked him to. So I appreciate you making the time for us. And man, this is a lot of fun. You've got some new fans now as a result of this, and looking forward to cheering on Houston this year and keeping track with what you're doing this year and in the years to come. I hope that sometime down the road we can get you back on again.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I look forward to that.
Yes, sir. That's Rashawn Sanford II from Houston, and looking forward to seeing what Houston does this year under the year 2 of Coach Fritz, and excited to see what goes on with that. Dad, that was a lot of fun. Let's get into the Big 12, because we've got a lot to discuss, and we've got a few NFL things to hit at the end of the show as well. But Dad, let's run through these teams and kind of take a look at what we expect. I guess let's start with the tiers. This year, we're doing 4 tiers. We're doing national championship contenders, playoff contenders, bowl contenders, and then no bowls, teams that we don't think will hit a bowl game this year in the Big 12. So let's start off with national championship contenders from the Big 12. Dad, I have 0 teams as national championship contenders. I think we got some teams that are in the playoff hunt. But at the moment, I don't see anyone that I immediately go, yeah, that's a national championship team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I didn't have anybody there. There are a couple teams that could surprise there, but again, looking at people's schedules and who they're playing, I do think there'll be some teams that could make the playoffs, and if they do that, then they can make a run. But I don't know that there's a national. It's really strong in college football this year, and I don't know that there's anybody in the Big 12, like you said, that jumps out with that.
All right, so then let's go to the playoff tier. I've got 5 teams in my playoff tier, but I'm going to let you give us your tier first.
I've got 4. I've got Kansas State, who I think should have a good team again and will be there. Arizona State, who, of course, got in the playoffs last year. Utah, I think they can do well. I think they'll surprise a little bit. They're ranked a little lower. And then from looking and studying at it, I think BYU is really strong. So I have Kansas State, Arizona State, Utah, and BYU.
Interesting. I'm excited to talk about these teams more in a second. I've got Kansas State as well. I've got Arizona State and BYU. Then I've got Texas Tech and Iowa State as the other 2 in there. I do not have Utah up there, but I think, and I'll explain my reasons why here in just a moment as we go through these teams. So bowl teams, this is going to be the biggest tier for me. I've got Kansas, Utah, TCU, Baylor, Colorado, Houston, and Arizona as bowl teams this year out of the Big 12. Dad, who do you have in your bowl tier?
I have Texas Tech, Iowa State, Kansas, Baylor, TCU, and then there's 3 that are kind of right on the edge: Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, and Houston. And I have them getting in, but barely with 6 wins. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But otherwise, I had, like I said, TCU, Baylor, Kansas, then Iowa State, and Texas Tech.
Yeah, it's interesting. You got Oklahoma State in that tier. They won 1 game last year, so that'd be a big boost this year to get back to bowl wins. In my no bowl tier, I've got West Virginia, Cincinnati, UCF, and Oklahoma State as my 4 teams that I don't think make the bowl this year out of the Big 12. So, Dad, remind me who your last teams are there.
Yeah, the 4 I had were UCF, Colorado, West Virginia, and Arizona.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, let's break down each team then, look briefly at each of them. Let's start at Kansas State. Both of us think that they're going to be a good team this year. Last year, they were 9-4. They went 5-4 in the conference. Avery Johnson returns at quarterback. He's a dual threat quarterback, over 2,700 yards last year, throwing the ball, 605 yards rushing last season. This team is loaded when it comes to the run game. Great running back talent. Avery Johnson, of course, a great runner as well. So that's where they're really, really going to be good at, is when it comes to that rushing game. They also bring in a transfer from South Alabama, cornerback Amarian Gordonberry, 2 interceptions last season at South Alabama. He's going to bring some talent to that Kansas State team as well. Dad, they're at 8.5 is their win total for 2025. I've got an over there for 8.5. I think they're back to at least 9 wins again this season.
Yeah, I think I have them down for 9 wins too. So I think they'll be over 8.5. I think they should be real strong.
All right. Let's go to Arizona State. Great year last year, 11-3. You said it, playoff run, 7-2 in the conference. Cam Scatabo was the big storyline, come playoff time for Arizona State. He is gone to the NFL, but Sam Leavitt is back at quarterback, 2,885 yards, 24 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions last year. And, oh, by the way, Arizona State returned 16 starters from last season's team. So although Cam Scatabo is a big loss for Arizona State, 16 returning players is pretty important. They also bring in a wide receiver from Fresno State who had 48 catches, 563 yards, and 4 touchdowns last year in Jalen Moss. And then a safety they brought in as well. I forgot to write down which college he came from, but Kendrick Breedlove had 3 interceptions last season. He comes over in the transfer portal as well. Arizona State's at 8.5 also. The Cam Scatabo lost the great season last year. It seems like people are kind of saying, well, they're going to have a drop down this year. But again, I just have a hard time seeing where they don't make it to 9. So with Sam Leavitt at quarterback, he's potentially a first-round quarterback next year in the draft. I just have to kind of lean on the side of Sam Leavitt. So I'm going to go over again for Arizona State at 8.5.
Yeah, same way. I had 9 wins for them. And, I think they showed last year, their strength a little bit. And with that many returning people, again, there's going to be, 5 or 6 teams in the conference that those games could go either way, whether they split or one team really dominates them. And Arizona State will have to win some of those, but I think they will.
Yes, I agree. All right. BYU is next, 11-2 last season, 7-2 in the conference. They've got a really strong defense coming back. Jake Retzlaff, the quarterback, is back as well. Last year, he had just under 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, but 12 interceptions. He did add a little bit on the ground as well, 511 yards and 6 touchdowns. So when I look at this BYU team, I see consistency, Dad, and that's kind of where I'm sitting with them as potentially a playoff team this year, potentially winning the conference this year as well. Their win total's at 7.5. I'm not sure why it's down that far. So I'm going to go over again here at the top of the Big 12. I just see it as being another over. So I'm going over for BYU.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm over from that standpoint also. They do have a couple of their tough games on the road, but, again, BYU seems like a little bit of a hard place for teams to go in there and play. And I think they'll do well. So, again, I had them for 9 wins, so definitely over 7.5.
Okay. Iowa State is the next one, 11-3 last year, 7-2 in the conference. They've got an interesting schedule, Dad. They open the season in Dublin against Kansas State. So to have your first game not only against another conference opponent, but to have it overseas is really intriguing. A tough schedule overall. Most of their hard games are at home. And, of course, they've got their quarterback, Rocco Beck, returning as well. They lose 2 stud receivers to the NFL this year. They bring in a wide receiver, Chase Soule, from Eastern Carolina, who had 678 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. to try to help fill that void left by Jaden Higgins and Jaden Noel. 7.5 is the win total for Iowa State. And for me, again, Dan, I look at it, okay, you got a quarterback who's been really good, and he's back. It just makes sense that they're still going to be at least an 8-win team. So I feel bad going over for all these teams towards the top, but I'm going to go over again at 7.5 for Iowa State.
Well, I have them for 7 wins, so I'll go under 7.5. The key to them, and every year it's kind of this way, is the Iowa game. That's a big rivalry game, and depending on how they can do with that. So,
fair enough. All right, let's go to Texas Tech. There are a lot of people high on Texas Tech this year. They were 8-5 last year, 6-3 in the conference. Dad, they had a massive transfer class, and one of the most expensive transfer classes in all of college football this year. 17 guys come in. Their GM, James Blanchard, he turned down the GM position at Notre Dame to stick around at Texas Tech. So it tells you a little bit about, number one, the money flow. Number two, kind of there's something brewing here in Lubbock. Quarterback Baron Morton returns. He had over 3,300 yards last year and 27 touchdowns. They averaged 450 yards per game last year. The defense, though, was 121st in points allowed. So the defense has to improve for Texas Tech to truly be legit, for something to truly happen for them. And so they've got a ton of transfers, but let me give you a couple of them that I think will be impact players for them this year. Running back Quentin Joyner comes over from USC. He had 478 yards and 3 touchdowns last year at Southern Cal. Wide receiver Reggie Virgil comes over from Miami of Ohio. 41 catches, 816 yards, and 9 touchdowns. On the defensive side, which is where they really had to improve, David Bailey comes over from Stanford, an edge rusher, 7 sacks and 5 forced fumbles last year. Defensive tackle Skylar Gill-Howard comes over from Northern Illinois. He had 5 sacks last season. Cornerback Bryce Pollock comes over from Mississippi State, 9 passes deflected last year. And then Dante Balfour comes in from Charlotte. He had 2 interceptions and 11 passes deflected this year. So this team it's a brand new team, basically, with the exception of the quarterback and some key positions there as well. But Dad, the offense I don't have a problem with. It's the defense that I'm worried about. Their numbers at 8.5. And man, I'm just on that verge of 8. To me, it's 8 wins. I'm going under for Texas Tech, but it seems like everybody's all in on Texas Tech this year.
Yeah, I have them down for 9 wins, so I'll go over. A couple big games in the conference there will be BYU and Utah. If they can win both those, then that puts them in good shape. Like I said, a lot of transfers coming in, and just depends how quick they can gel and if that can make the difference on the defense. So, hopefully Texas Tech can be strong again.
Yeah, I mean, with the amount of money they spent, they better be, or someone's getting fired. So, and obviously they still have to put it all together on the field, and I've got nothing against players getting money. It's just a matter of, they got to make it worth the investment, I suppose. All right, let's go to Kansas next. 5-7 last year, 4-5 in the conference. Jalen Daniels does return at quarterback. He had over 2,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. They only have 3 returning defensive starters from last year. Last year they started 1-5, then they went 4-2, and Dad, they have 22 new transfers on this team. Some of which wide receiver Cam Pickett comes over from Ball State. He brings in 528 yards on 49 catches, 2 touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, Joseph Sipp Jr. from Bowling Green, 42 tackles, solo tackles, 7 sacks, 11.5 tackles for loss. And then cornerback DJ Graham comes in from Utah State, 2 interceptions and 3 forced fumbles last year as well. Dad, when I look at this team, I'm just sitting here going, it's Kansas and it's football. I still have not gotten over the fact that they've been decent because it's still Kansas football, and I don't think highly of Kansas football. So returning quarterback, great. 7.5 is their win total. I've got them in that 7 to 8 range. I'll play it relatively safe. I'm going to go with over on this one. Say they get to 8 wins, but I'm not sure. How do you sit with Kansas?
I had them for 7 wins, so I'll go just under 7.5. And it's funny what you said, because that's exactly how I feel. You always heard Kansas football, but the last couple of years they've been very formidable and they've beat some good teams. So obviously they're making improvements there from that standpoint, and so we will see how they do this year. They got a game with Missouri, which an SEC team, and we'll see how that goes and things like that. So.
Well, and Dad, I have to be nice to Kansas football because their coach is going to be here in my town here in just a couple weeks. Lance Leopold is a part owner of the minor league baseball team here. So he's going to be here in a meet and greet at the baseball game. I might have to try to sneak in and get an interview with him. But so for that reason, I'm going over 7.5. So Coach Leopold, if you heard that, there you go. We're connected now.
Yeah, I remember heard you mention that he's going to be in town. So just be sure you got your Rock Chalk Jayhawk shirt on, and you'll be okay.
So I shouldn't wear my Kentucky. Is what you're saying. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go to. I'm not wearing Rock Chalk Jayhawk. I can promise you that. All right. Utah is next. 5-7 last season. 2-7 in the conference. Strong defense. They've got a new quarterback. Devin Dampier comes over from New Mexico. Last year, 2,700 yards, 12 touchdowns, 12 picks at New Mexico. They also bring in a new running back. Wayshawn Parker comes over from Washington State. He had 137 carries last year, 735 yards, and 4 touchdowns. They also have another New Mexico transfer wide receiver, Ryan Davis. He had 54 catches for 747 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. Dad, Utah, you're big on them. I'm not. Their win total is at 7.5. I've got them at 7 wins. I'm going under 7.5, but you seem to think something's brewing there for Utah.
Yeah, they're just a team that when you see them on the schedule, I was never really concerned about that, but it seems like now all of a sudden on Saturdays you see even a good team getting beat, and it's in Utah. So we'll see if they can continue. I had them for 8 wins, so I'll go over 7.5. But again, they're one of those teams that, if they lose 3 or 4 of the key conference games, then, they're not going to be up there. But if they win a couple of them, that'll knock somebody else down. So we will see. The 2 Kansas teams, Kansas State and Kansas, big games, I think, for them.
Very good. All right, let's go to TCU. 9-4 last season, 6-3 in the conference. There's an expectation of a drop-off here for TCU this year. Josh Hoover, the quarterback, almost 4,000 yards last year and 27 touchdowns. They do have the number 1 recruiting class in the Big 12, which doesn't usually mean a whole lot in year 1 necessarily of that class. But they've got a really tough schedule this year. They did bring in a Washington State transfer on the defensive side of the ball, Ansley Dinmumbu, 6 sacks and 7 tackles for losses last season. Dad, TCU, their win total is set at 6.5 after a 9-win season. But like I said, their schedule just doesn't lay out kindly for them this year. But at 6.5, I have a hard time going under that for them after a 9-win year last year. So I'm going to go over and say they get to at least 7 wins this year. How do you feel about TCU?
Yeah, I had them down for 7 wins. So, again, I think I'll go over on that. But like you said, they've got some tough games. Play SMU out of the conference, and then they've got Baylor and some others. So,
all right. That leads us into Baylor. Baylor's 8-5 last season, 6-3 in the conference. Sawyer Robertson returns. 3,000 yards last year, 28 touchdowns. The team won their last 6 regular season games, and their offense is returning 9 starters. So when you get 9 of 11 back, you'd like to think maybe there would be a little bit of improvement over last year. They bring in an Alabama wide receiver, Kobe Prentice. Minimal experience at Alabama, only 11 catches. But those 11 went for 129 yards and a touchdown. They also bring in an FIU linebacker, Travion Barnes. He He had 129 tackles last season, 10.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and throw in 2 interceptions just for the fun of it. And then they also bring in another edge rusher, Matthew Fobbs-White, 7.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and a forced fumble last season. Dad, Baylor's at 7.5 on their win total. They had 8 games last year. And again, the Big 12, it's a tough conference. I mean, there's not really very many, if any, gimme games in the conference. And so you got to win those non-conference games for sure. They were an 8-win team last year. Sawyer Robinson returns. The offense has good continuity. So I'm going to go ahead and go over 7.5. But that would be, I'm not putting money on that, so I'm not too scared. But I'm going to go over 7.5 for Baylor.
Yeah, I had them down as 8 also. But like you said, you got to win non-conference games, and they've got Auburn and SMU on the schedule. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, tough ones for sure. All right, let's go to Colorado. Lots of question marks around Colorado. Last year, 9-4, 7-2 in the conference. But they take all the hype away this year. Not all of it, of course. Prime is still there coaching, but you take away Shedeur Sanders, you take away Travis Hunter, what is left for Colorado? And that's the question we're waiting to see. Caden Salter will come in at the quarterback. He's a dual threat quarterback. He's going to have options and opportunity there for Colorado. He comes over from Liberty. Last year, 1,800 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. They also bring in a couple wide receivers. Let's see here. Where am I at? Joseph Williams comes over from Tulsa. He had 30 catches at Tulsa, 588 yards, and 5 touchdowns there. And then they also bring in a linebacker who had 9.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks from Jacksonville State, Reginald Hughes. Dad, this is a team I'm probably the most intrigued to see from last year to this year, kind of what happens in Boulder. The win total is at 6.5. Boy, I have a hard time with this one. I think they're a bowl team. I think Caden Salter has a lot of potential, but how does Prime handle not having his kids there anymore? What does that look like? So I'm going to go under 6.5. I'm going to give them 6 wins.
Yeah, I go under 6.5 also, and it'll be real interesting to see how he can do. If he really retools things and they're a real factor again, or you wonder how long, he'll be at Colorado anyhow. So we will see.
All right. That brings us to Houston. And we just had a great conversation with Rashawn Sanford II. And, I get real biased when I get guys on the show. So Houston wins it all, undefeated this year. But they're 4-8 last year, 3-6 in the conference. They do bring in Connor Wigman from A&M, Texas A&M. He had 819 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 5 picks last year. But obviously, given a full slate, given the reins of the offense, really interesting to see what he's able to do. They also bring in a running back, Dean Connors from Rice, to kind of be that second running back there with Rashawn. And he had 159 touches last year for Rice, 780 yards, 9 touchdowns. They bring in a wide receiver from UAB, Amari Thomas, who had 62 catches, 8 touchdowns last year. Then on the defensive side of the ball, they went up to Mizzou to get Carmika Glass, a linebacker, 75 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss. And then a safety from Georgia Southern, Mark Stampley, 3 picks, 7 passes deflected, and 2 sacks from that safety position as well. Dad, again, the defense has to improve. They bring in all these transfers. They do have some playmakers returning on offense as well. Second year under Coach Fritz, I think there's improvement. So 5.5 is the number. 5 would obviously be an improvement from last year. I'm giving them at least 6. I got Houston going over 5.5 this year.
Yeah, I do too. I had them at 6 wins, which would put them in a bowl. And again, it was great talking to Rashawn. And but when you mentioned when talking to him, they've had a lot of transfers on the offensive line. So they brought in some people that can really help them. And, if they can get a good ground game going and everything there, that helps a lot with a lot of these teams. And Houston's one of those teams, if they can beat a UCF, if they can beat a TCU, then they're going to be in pretty good shape for at least 6 wins. So yeah, I'm all in with Houston being over 5.5.
Yeah, and again, it starts with the non-conference games, right? The SF Austin and Rice, and then their first conference game's Colorado, but they get them at home. I think that's a good time to get Colorado personally. So that's an important one, of course, as well. You got some tough games in there, but the Oklahoma States, who weren't good last year, you got to beat them. West Virginia, got to beat them. UCF, got to beat them. So there's a lot of winnable games on that schedule for Houston this year. And I think you could see a big bump from them in year 2 under Coach Fritz. But at least I've got him at 6 for sure. All right, let's go to West Virginia, the return of Rich Rod. West Virginia 6-7 last year, 5-4 in the conference. Rich Rodriguez back as the head coach, so that's going to be fun. Lots of transfers here at West Virginia. They bring in a receiver from Jacksonville State, Cam Vaughn. He had 803 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. Defensively is where they brought in the most. There's an end, Jamori Robinson from UTSA, 17 tackles for losses, 10.5 sacks last year. That's a great addition for the West Virginia Mountaineers. They got a Nevada cornerback, Michael Coates Jr., 4 interceptions last year, 13 passes deflected. And then Jacksonville State safety Fred Perry, 110 tackles, 10 of those for loss, 2 forced fumbles there as well. 5.5 is the number for West Virginia. I do not have them as a bowl team. I think give Rich Rodriguez a couple of years and he'll be back to at least relevance at the very least. But in year 1, I think it's going to be a tough battle for West Virginia. So I'm going to go under 5.5 for this season for West Virginia.
Yeah, I had under 5.5 also, had with 5 wins there. So I think you're right on with West Virginia.
Okay. And, Rich Rodriguez comes over. These Jacksonville State transfers, that's where he came from. So he's got some familiarity with some of these guys already. He'll improve West Virginia again. It just might take a little bit of time for him. All right, let's go to Cincinnati. Cincinnati 5-7 last year, 3-6 in the conference. Brendan Sorsby is their quarterback, over 3,000 yards last year. They're going to add in a running back out of Wisconsin, Tawi Walker, 190 touches last year. That's a bunch of carries, 864 yards and 10 touchdowns. They also bring in a good cornerback from Coastal Carolina, Matthew McDoom, a phenomenal name for a cornerback, Matthew McDoom. 3 tackles for losses, 3 interceptions, 11 passes deflected last year. Dad, Cincinnati's just not a team that I've got a ton of confidence in. 6.5 was too high for me. I'm going under. I don't think they get to 6, but maybe they do. Either way, I'm going under 6.5.
Yeah, I have them getting 6, but that'd be under 6.5. So, we'll see how the Bearcats do there. But again, like you said, in some ways it's a tough conference, especially when you get in the middle of the conference there, and somebody's not going to win them all. So we'll see.
Now, I've not been in a ton of different press boxes, but I'll give this to Cincinnati, an incredible press box. All you can eat buffet. The seating is phenomenal. It's a beautiful room. What they did there and built is gorgeous. So I'll give that to the Bearcats. By the way, shout out to them. All right, let's go to Arizona. 4-8 last year, 2-7 in the conference. Noah Fafita, the quarterback. Possibly. They also have a Wisconsin transfer in Brandon Locke, or they've got 2 freshmen, Sawyer Robinson and Robert McDaniel. The summer will play out, and we'll see who the quarterback ends up being in Arizona. A lot of competition there for sure. They did lose a lot, but they have 53 new offensive players, 30 transfers, 23 high school recruits. So I just don't think that's a great look. It's not going to be ideal for Arizona. They got a really tough schedule as well. Transfer-wise, Texas State comes in. I think it's Texas State. I think that's correct. Could be wrong on that. Running back Ishmael Mahdi, 183 touches, 991 yards, 4 touchdowns last year. They bring in a Washington State receiver in Chris Houston, who had 683 yards and 2 touchdowns, and a New Mexico wide receiver and Luke Wysong, 69 catches, 840 yards and a touchdown last year. Dad, Arizona, I'm not a believer in them this year either. 5.5 is their win total. I'll go the under on that one.
Yeah, I'm under 5.5 on that one. So I think they're going to have a tough time this year for sure.
All right, man, it's a lot of new players. All right, let's go to Central Florida next. 4-8 last season, 2-7 on the road. In the conference. Scott Frost returns, so they got two different teams in the conference who have a coach coming back after being away for a short time. Scott Frost is back as the head coach. They've got a QB battle going on with returner Ja'Cory Brown and transfers Cam Francher and Taven Jackson. Another team, when you go into the summer not knowing who your quarterback is, and that's not always a bad thing, but it's not typically a great thing either. So we'll see how that plays out. They did get a safety from FAU, with 56 tackles, 3 picks, 4 passes deflected, 2.5 tackles for loss. Philip Dunham comes over from Florida Atlantic to Central Florida. Dad, again, kind of the same thing with Rich Rodriguez. I think Scott Frost in time will get this team back up, but not this year. 5.5. I'll go ahead and go under on that one.
Yeah, I have only 5 wins, so I'll go under 5.5 on that. I do think UCF was a good addition to the Big 12, and I think it'll be very positive as time goes on.
Okay. All right. Last team, Dad, Oklahoma State. 3-9 last season, 0-9 in the conference. Oh boy, Dad, that's not good. Mike Gundy, he's a man. Are we done making fun of Mike Gundy yet? I'm not sure, but 0 conference wins last year. Only 2 on-field assistants remain for Oklahoma State this year. They cleaned house. Todd Grantham comes in as the defensive coordinator. That's a great hire. And then quarterback is the TCU transfer, Haz Hejny, as well. Man, I'm dying over here with these allergies. Wide receiver Christian Fitzpatrick comes over in the transfer portal, 576 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. Dad, Oklahoma State's at 5.5. I cannot see them getting to 6 wins after last season. That would be a massive turnaround. So, Dad, I'm going to go under 5.5 for the Cowboys. You seem to be a little higher on Oklahoma State.
Well, I think you're right on that. With the record where it was last year and everything, I'm probably a little prejudiced because I have friends in Stillwater, and you do too. Got people even that work for the university, but I can't imagine Oklahoma State being down for real long. So hopefully they will come back, but they could very easily be under 5.5 for this one.
All right, so I just need to go back because I thought I heard you say they were a bowl team this year. Or you said they were on the verge of a bowl team?
I did, but I must have read that wrong. My paper now says 5. So anyhow,
all right. So yeah, they're yeah.
There we go.
We still have friends. Hopefully we still have friends at Oklahoma State. All right, very good. There you go. There's the Big 12. Up top, I think this is really there's less teams in the middle. In my opinion, in this conference, you've got a bunch of teams vying for the top and then a bunch of teams kind of at the bottom. Very few teams just kind of middling around there in this conference. So I'm intrigued to see how it comes out. Should be a fun conference to watch this year. I'm excited about it for sure. Any closing thoughts on the Big 12?
No, like I said, I think it'll be a fun conference to watch, and we'll keep up with it and keep up with Houston for sure.
All right, before we get out tonight, let's go ahead and switch gears to the NFL and talk Aaron Rodgers. He signs his 1-year deal tomorrow, supposedly Friday. He'll be signing his 1-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not a surprise. We knew it was coming. Everyone said it was coming. Not a surprise, but your thoughts?
Well, I think it'll be a total disaster, I think, both for him and the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers, a lot of baggage when he comes on a team. And I think, especially when you're talking a 1-year deal, I just don't know how the other players and everybody in Pittsburgh. I mean, I don't think Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career is the kind of guy that can just come in and, change everything for a year. He does have, Metcalf there now. Be very interesting to see how that goes. I think there's a big question with his health. Can he hold up, for a year there? Coming in like he is now later, to me, Aaron Rodgers just doesn't gel well with people anyhow. And it'll be interesting to see how he's accepted. Now, they win the first 4 games. That'll change, that will change some stuff and buy some time. I'm a little surprised Pittsburgh has done this, even though it did make sense and you heard this is what was going to happen. Not a big, as far as personality with Terry Bradshaw, but he's had a lot to say about it, which obviously that doesn't carry any weight we've seen here. So, I don't know that Rodgers will end his career. This will be a good end of his career for him. We'll see. I think he should have retired. I think that would have been the better thing at this point. But, it'll make for a lot of interesting things. The media will be very, very excited about it. And I'm sure the TV market right now is excited about it. So, of course, they play Green Bay week 8 there in Pittsburgh if he's still upright in the quarterback at that time. So we will see.
Well, one thing that Rodgers has done very well at throughout his career is carry a chip on his shoulder. Week 1 is the Jets. He supposedly was surprised that he walked into the Jets office and in a 2-minute conversation was told, "You're not coming back," and was surprised by that. So he gets them in week 1. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see, does that motivate him enough to really put in the work and be ready for the season? Then on top of that, you do have the Green Bay Packer game as well. And by the way, quick shout out, Coach McGuire. They're commenting, "You're right, Dad. He should have retired." As well. Thanks for tuning in, Coach. And so, there are very few teams that Aaron Rodgers was going to work with. I think the Steelers is one of the very few teams he can work with. Mike Tomlin being the coach makes sense in that aspect. They've always had a fun relationship. This summer, we saw earlier in this, I guess, late spring, Rodgers and Metcalf working out together out in California. So they've already worked together some and begin working. They also bring in Robert Woods, a veteran wide receiver. Rodgers does not like young receivers. So again, bring in a veteran wide receiver there as well. On the fantasy football show on Tuesday, we talked about Caleb Johnson some. How does this fit for him? I like him at running back. They also have Jaylen Warren. So there's some potential there. Defensively, they've got a ton of veterans, which makes sense, right? TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, those kinds of guys that I think Rodgers can kind of meld with. He does better with the older guys than he does with the younger guys. So we'll see how it shakes out. We'll see overall how it works. Like I said, I don't think that they're a Super Bowl team by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think that, of all the teams out there, this is one team that I thought actually made sense for Rodgers compared to a lot of, you heard his name tied to the Giants. That didn't make any sense to me with their talent level and where they are. Pittsburgh, though, is a different kind of roster makeup, a different program. And I think it can work for Rodgers, at least to end on a better note than what he would have ended if he retired after last season with the Jets. So there you go. Those are my thoughts as well from there. We'll talk about that much more as we get closer to the NFL season. We'll be breaking down the NFL divisions and team by team, all that good stuff as well. So we'll be hitting on that too. Dad, any other topics you want to hit on before I kind of do some housekeeping as we close up?
Well, we did have a big loss in the NFL this week. Jim Marshall passed away, who was a member of the Vikings and the Purple People Eaters. Again, I'm old enough to remember that. When I was a kid, it seemed like every team there for 10 years or so, had to have a nickname for their defense. And I'm not sure that the Purple People Eaters were the first ones, but they were one of the most prominent ones from there. And Marshall was a big part of that. And, when you look at the history, again, he was way before your time. But, during my time, you talk about great players in the NFL, and definitely Marshall and that whole line with Larson and Page and Eller, was really, really good. And he passed away this week, so condolences to his family. And he's a Hall of Famer and was a big name in the NFL.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, that's going to be it for our program today. Next week, we continue our college football conference previews. We're going to hit the Big Ten next week. So we're looking forward to that. A couple things. This year, I am now the new host of the Belly Up Fantasy Football Live Show every Tuesday night on the Belly Up Sports Network. You can check that out anywhere you can check out the Belly Up Sports Network. So on the Belly Up Sports YouTube channel, the Belly Up Fantasy Sports Facebook page, or there's also the podcast version of the show, the Belly Up Fantasy Football Live podcast. You can find that anywhere you get your podcasts. This show continues every Thursday night, talking about all the football news as well. And then on Sunday nights, you can join me for fantasy baseball talk if you're into that as well on the Belly Up Sports Network also. All right. Big shout out to the University of Houston, to the running back, Rashawn Sanford II, for coming on and chatting with us tonight. Greatly appreciated that, and appreciate them working with us, as I mistakenly gave them the wrong time. So that's amazing to work with you all. Thank you for that, for sure. Thank you to shout out to Parker Ainsworth, host of the Locked On Cougars podcast, covering Houston sports, and helped me out with some research there as well. I appreciate that too. All right, follow us on social media at Sports Stove on Twitter and Instagram. We sure appreciate you tuning in to tonight's edition of the Sports Stove Football Show. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.